This podcast contains spoilers, so listen at your own risk or call back after you've watched the movie.
You know who you call. Leave a message. Maybe they'll call you back. Then again, maybe they won't.
We're having ourselves quite a little game of phone tag here.
Ring. I usually get this guy's answering machine.
I'll call you right back.
If you're there, please pick up the phone. I really want to talk to you.
I check my fucking messages every day when I come home from work. My answering machine, zero. I got a blinking light.
All I have to do is pick up this phone right here, inform the cinema, and your plan's kaput.
No, I ain't got no phone. I had to pull, because people calling all the time, and who needs the aggravation, right? Interruptions.
Hey man, watched Kill Me Again last night. We recently watched John Dahl's Red Rock West, which is a title I always just struggle. I always say it a bit slower than I would say the name of most movies. Red Rock West, because basically she sells seashells on the seashore. But Kill Me Again rolls off the tongue a little bit easier. I think it's his first movie. It's definitely the movie that kind of like catapulted him to the small amount of fame that he would have throughout his career. I think his calling card instantly became neo-noirs. In fact, I've actually seen Kill Me Again called like the beginning of the neo-noir craze. I mean, neo-noir, like most film genres, is one that there is completely different interpretations of. So for some people, it's every film noir film made from the 1960s onwards. I guess Chinatown, The Long Goodbye, things like that. For other people, it's more like some people would call them film noirs, and the more recent ones like LA Confidential and stuff like that's the neo noirs, maybe Brick, stuff like that. I don't know personally what the most popular interpretation is, but I think what's more likely is that neo-noirs may have sort of fallen out of popularity, and then in the late 80s it was things like Blood Simple and Kill Me Again that aroused some new interest in the subgenre. This is more so than Red Rock West, I would say, like a kind of classic film noir tale. For starters, the fact that he's a private detective, I think, immediately puts you in that space. Val Kilmer, that is. I had a fair bit of fun with the movie. It's interesting watching it straight after Red Rock West, which is the more polished, fully realized version of this type of film. Kind of reminds me a little bit of, I think I saw Desperado before I saw El Mariachi, but they were both movies I watched a lot back in the 90s, and it's not as extreme, the difference between the two films in terms of budget and stuff, but there is a bit of that sort of like, okay, Kill Me Again is him sort of figuring things out, figuring out how he can make movies, make this type of movie, and then Red Rock West is like the fully polished, finished product of this type of a film. So there's definitely an element of that. This one's rough around the edges. It doesn't all work, but it's a fun, good time. I think it's 1989 it came out. I was trying to remember when Reservoir Dogs came out. I think it's 1992. So I'd assume Tarantino must have been a fan of this film, at least in the casting of Michael Madsen in Reservoir Dogs. But I wouldn't even be surprised to find that this was part of the thousands of films that were an influence on Tarantino. I mean, certainly the films that are an influence on Kill Me Again would have been in the mix for Tarantino as well. But it does fit quite nicely into that. Again, Blood Simple, Reservoir Dogs, that late 80s, early 90s indie crime movie, kind of hard-boiled, neo-noir, pulpy type of collection of movies that were coming out at that time. Speaking of which, Michael Madsen is very good in this. I think I like him in general. You might be able to hear my son breathing. I've got a little baby in my arms as we speak. Yeah, I like I like Michael Madsen. I think he was supposed to be the Travolta role in Pulp Fiction, but he turned it down to do something like, I can't remember if it was Sphere or Cocoon or something like that, but a movie that was like a much bigger Hollywood blockbustery type movie, but certainly didn't have the cultural impact of Pulp Fiction. And that, he seemed to have taken a few sort of wrong turns, if you will, that ultimately led to him not kind of becoming a A-list superstar. But going from this movie to Reservoir Dogs, there must have been a lot of heat around him. And I think this is the type of character that he most often plays. This is probably the best I've seen that. Really fun performance. Val Kilmer, on the other hand, who I'm quite a fan of, didn't give me much in this film. Can't help but contrast it to Nicolas Cage a few years later in Red Rock West, who I think is a much more compelling leading man in these movies. I like Val Kilmer. I think in movies a little while after this, like Heat, he's fantastic. Even in a neo-noir like Kiss Kiss Bang Bang, he's fantastic. But there's something here that just makes him like the least charismatic of the major characters. The girl is good. I wasn't familiar with her, but she's married to Val Kilmer at the time. In fact, I read afterwards that they wanted her from the part after they cast Val Kilmer, not knowing that they were married. And they actually wanted her. I don't know if this is true. Often these kind of anecdotes are just a bit too good to be true. But Kilmer is like, oh, that's interesting. I'm actually married to that girl. I can probably get her in. But yeah, she does a good job. She was in Willow, apparently, which is how they met, I think. And apparently an English actress as well. So accent is flawless here. Maybe from being married to Kilmer. Not sure. And the other guy that pops up, I forget his name. John Greer or something. He is the friend of Kilmer, who kind of like his confidant, works with him on some things. I was trying to work out what I recognized him from. I looked up his IMDb. He's been in quite a lot of different films. He's been in a few Barry Sonnenfeld films, but he's just been in this, that, and the other. But chiefly, he's known as the uncle character from Napoleon Dynamite. It kind of made me think, oh, it's funny, these people who have been in Hollywood for ages. I mean, Kill Me Again is like his 50th movie or something. Like he's just been knocking around for so long, and he's been in so many different things, and kind of everyone knows his face, but very few people, I'd imagine, know his name. But then along that journey, at one random point, early 2000s or whenever Napoleon Dynamite came out, he just has this like super iconic performance. I can't remember if it's the uncle or I can picture him in Napoleon Dynamite. But yeah, that's always nice when one of these character actors just has one thing that's sort of their calling card, at least, that they can be known for, hang their hat on. For a movie, I'm also thinking of like Hard Eight, which is another debut film from a noteworthy director from this era. That's a crime, pulpy flick. Like it's nice in all cases to see like the ability to get good actors, like famous actors, noteworthy actors in a debut film at this time, and also just be able to rustle up the budget to make an actual film on celluloid. Like obviously that was the only option back then, but still, like it's such an expensive endeavor. It's just kind of interesting to think how that was put together. I believe John Dahl was a storyboard artist and had worked on things like RoboCop. So I don't know how much cachet that gives you, but yeah, it's pretty impressive as a debut. I mean, I know you and I have like become fans of directors and then kind of followed the trail all the way back to the beginning and got to earlier movies and be like, yikes, they really didn't know how to do anything on a filmmaking level at this point. Whereas this is fairly accomplished, but it's a slight movie. It's a forgettable movie. It's a nice throwaway, like DVD movie. I think, like all of his films, this was a flop that then had a new life on the small screen. That just seems to be the recurring theme over and over again in his movies. And it just has that, like there's some quality to his film where it's like prestige schlock or something, like elevated schlock. And I'd say that about Joyride, and I'd say that about Rounders. It's like these aren't ever going to be winning Oscars, and I almost say that as a compliment. These are pulpy, straight to video type movies. They're not literally straight to video, but that's the type of film. But then, good actors, good writing, like sincere commitment to the material, and you end up coming away with like a fun little flick. I would say Red Rock West, I really, really like. I think that's a pretty brilliant movie. This is a throwaway fun late night movie. I was quite tired when I was watching it, falling asleep, and had to kind of restart a couple of scenes. But I didn't really mind because it just has that kind of like late night energy. I'm eager to watch The Last Seduction, which is kind of a missing piece at this point, the third of these initial 3 movies he put out, which has Bill Pullman in it as well. So Pullman was his lecturer or his professor when John Dahl went to film school. I mentioned in our conversation about Presumed Innocent, but yeah. What else to say about this film? I liked like the kind of, it's not an intricate plot, it's not a complicated plot, but it does have little things like, oh, she's flirting with the motel clerk guy, and then the next thing it's like, do you sure he'll remember you, or do you think he'll remember? It's like, oh right, okay, that was the reason for that. It has got a kind of fairly cleverly worked out thing. It's not complicated, but it's well done. In the era before like the NSA or like cameras everywhere and internet tracking and stuff, you can imagine that this plan, this like killing plan in the motel room probably would work. I mean, why would the police dig that much deeper? So it's a fairly decent little plan. I like the double crosses. It is tropey for sure, the fact that like, she just continuously can't be trusted, but it's also, it's fun energy. Although the final twist, the final switcheroo, when he digs up the briefcase, they shoot him, he falls into the water, it turns out it's just like a phone book in there, and he actually has the duffel bag full of money. I can't for the life of me work out how he has that money. Like, what, doesn't make any sense at all to me. I did have a little clickaroo back down through the movie to try and work out where that duffel bag originated from. Like, did we see him at some point stashing something somewhere? But no, I can't actually make sense of how he has that money at the end of the movie. So one tiny little complaint I'd have is just giving me a bit more clarity on that there. But overall, just fun throwaway entertainment, and really interesting to watch alongside Red Rock West, and just seeing how powerful a difference it makes when you like throw in a Dennis Hopper, throw in a JT Walsh, throw in a Nicolas Cage, tighten up the script a bit, tighten up the directing and the filmmaking in general a bit, and increase the budget slightly and whatnot. It's nice to see. It's a nice example of like leveling up as a director, as a writer director across 2 movies. So yeah, what did you think? How did you feel it compared to Red Rock West? And I mean, do you think it's worth going back to movies like this? These kind of, it was a flop when it released. It's not really talked about now. It's kind of a largely forgotten film. Should it just remain that way, or do you think this is a movie that people should be checking out?
Hey man, just watched Kill Me Again now and listened to your voice note. It's late on a Saturday night. I say late, it is 10:43, but that is late for me nowadays. Who would have thought? That's what happens when you get to whatever the fuck age I am now. Good movie to watch on a Saturday night. So yeah, quite a few things. Just to reply to the end of your voice message first, I think this is a good movie. I think this is definitely a movie that shouldn't be forgotten about. I think it is a good movie in its own right. Obviously not as polished as Red Rock West. I also realized that I was slowing down when I said that name when we were talking about it last time. I realized I took a Shakespearean pause, like I had forgotten the name of the movie, but I hadn't forgotten the name of the movie. And now I realize just because it's really hard to fucking say. So yeah, I think, I don't know who his cinematographer is, but the movies are very well lit and very well captured of natural light, aren't they? Just some of those skies and some of that background, that golden hour shooting and whatnot. Very nice to look at. You mentioned that you wouldn't be surprised if Quentin Tarantino saw this movie and was influenced by it. I had the same thought, actually. You can't watch that scene where Michael Madsen has Val Kilmer's friend tied to the chair and not think that that was all the audition Michael Madsen needed for the Reservoir Dogs torture scene. I have to believe that it was an influence and came across Quentin Tarantino's desk, or indeed his video shop. Yeah, he probably would have been working in the video shop at the time, wouldn't he, with movies like this coming out? Maybe not, maybe not. It certainly captured the eye of Francis Ford Coppola as well, so there was quite a buzz about this movie. The other thing is as well, we get these long highways and golden desert surroundings in movies like Red Rock West and Kill Me Again. And this one specifically reminded me aesthetically of Breaking Bad in a way. And again, this is pure speculation, but John Dahl did direct one episode of Breaking Bad early on in its series. I think it was season 2, the episode called Down. I wonder if Vincent Gilligan or Gillian, whichever they pronounce it, I wonder if he also watched this movie and some of it formed a visual style for Breaking Bad in his head to some small degree. Pure speculation, but it did get me wondering. I kind of cracked what I liked about the John Dahl experience in this movie most of all. And yeah, it isn't as good as Red Rock West. I still had a very good time, have to say. I think, do you know what it is? And we were talking about Presumed Innocent, where the threads lead nowhere. And every bullshit thread in Presumed Innocent, the TV show, was a dead herring. Is that a new phrase? I guess red herring is fine. I don't know why I need to update it. But what I like about John Dahl films is every detail leads somewhere. It's almost the complete opposite of something like Presumed Innocent. You know, in other movies, when Michael Madsen and I believe her name is Joanne Wally robbed that briefcase in the opening scenes of the movie, that would just have been used and forgotten about in order to get to what they're really interested in. And we see that in a lot of movies where the quote unquote hook or conception is used to just get the movie somewhere else. And you wonder, why bother in the first place? Well, John Dahl's able to have his cake and eat it, isn't he? He's able to use that tropey bullshit plot of stealing a briefcase to set in motion a string of events or a series of events. But he also gets back to it. Nothing's really forgotten with this guy. And I really like that. That briefcase is going to be searched for from the initial people as well. And again, this happened in Red Rock West, where Nicolas Cage takes the place of a hitman. But guess what? We're going to get the hitman also. So he's very consistent with any idea he throws out there. It isn't just for the sake of it. And of course, you brought up the fact when the Joanne Wally character, she's very flirty with the hotel clerk, Timmy. And that's for a reason as well. So all the chess pieces, again, it's quite simple, like you say. But I just like the way like a good TV series or a good movie, no thread is wasted. Something that happens is going to be mentioned and it's going to lead to something else. And then it builds on that and it stacks on that. So we get what seems like multiple threads. Not enough movies do it. And I remember even in the scene in Rounders, there's a whole thing with John Malkovich where I think does he eat Oreos while he plays Rounders? And he is just seems like an odd character beat. And he's just eating his Oreos and snapping the biscuit a certain way while he's playing poker. And then it turns out, oh no, that was actually important. That tips his bluff. That tips what he's feeling about the cards. And all this information we get about characters or moments in any of these John Dahl movies I've seen so far contributes in a meaningful way to the plot or the story or the characters. And I like that about these movies. And there's a lot to be said as well. I ask you for these movies a lot where it's late at night, I'm tired, I don't want to think, I don't want to have to overanalyze anything. I just want to sit down and watch an entertaining movie. And you'd be surprised how quickly that well dries up. And all the John Dahl movies I've seen so far, and including these two new ones, I would just add to that list if someone asked me. I'd say, you know what, you need to watch this movie. It's entertaining, fun, it's good. And including Joyride actually as well. So he's almost 4 for 4. And that's really important in my film viewing experience all my life. That type of movie. It's really important to me. Few things. I liked Joanna Wally's character. I like the way she used their sexuality. I liked the way both her and Michael Madsen are not very clever in different ways. Michael Madsen is driven by Jess being a complete fucking menace and a psychopath. Love Madsen's face in movies. He always feels constantly bothered with this furrow off his brow or the scrunched up forehead or that look in his eye. Just always looks bothered and irritable. It's brilliant. And Joanna Wally, her character, isn't particularly clever. Doesn't have a particular long-term plan. She even says in one scene that she she won't be around when she's older. Hopefully, she says it almost as a positive. So she's not got any real plan what she wants to do with the money. She just wants to almost have a good time, or just she's quite reckless, and she's quite dumb in some ways, but at the same time she's capable of being clever. So it's not the smartest people in the movie, which almost allows for contrivance to almost be logical, because they're not particularly clever. So then it allows everyone to catch up with everyone else and all these things to happen. They forget about the green band around the money. She changes her name but keeps the surname when she runs away from Val Kilmer. So all these nice ordinary level criminals, very ordinary, non-exceptional people are involved in this story. And that's brilliant. We're used to seeing people that are really good at their jobs and sharp, and we don't have any of that in this. And that's refreshing. Val Kilmer, I also like Val Kilmer. I enjoyed his performance enough. It was fine. Like you said, Nicolas Cage was a lot better. I think Val Kilmer reminds me very much of Austin Butler in this. In movies like The Bike Rider, I've done a 180 on Austin Butler from thinking he was very good in Dune 2 to then seeing him in stuff like Masters of the Air and The Bike Riders, where he just seems like I'm acting. I'm straight from a photo shoot. I'm a biker. I'm a pilot. And it just seems like, oh, they've got a model in here to pretend. And Val Kilmer, he's a bit too Austin Butler-y here, and he managed to get away from that in later movies like Heat and things like that, where he's still at that Austin Butler type head on him, but then he learned to do stuff with the space between his face and the cameras, and in this it's not quite there yet. I like the twist at the end. I really like the fact that we think Joanna Wally's character has killed Michael Madsen, but then it turns out they've convoluted a plan and then double cross Val Kilmer and shoot him. I really like that. Regarding your comments with the duffel bag, I don't really remember, but I just presumed that he put the money into the briefcase and did he buy a duffel bag when he went to the gas station that time? I think he bought a bag there, could be wrong, and then used that to make a switch with the money. It's funny actually with Michael Madsen when you were saying that he turned down some role. Oh yeah, you said Pulp Fiction. I remember him from Free Willy. Did he do Free Willy instead of doing that? Which would put him into the category of movie psychopaths that were first introduced to me through kid movies. And there's Joe Pesci and Michael Madsen. Good old salt of the earth Michael Madsen in Free Willy. Yeah, I'd potentially be up for The Last Seduction as well. Think that's definitely worth visiting, so we can see the canon of how John Dahl movie career unfolded. I've liked all these movies so far. I can't imagine not liking The Last Seduction as well. And I think a filmmaker like him is a loss to cinema. I think these type of movies are a big loss to cinema. It's hard to do them right. And like you said, I don't know if he used the word prestige, slock, but his plots are very Murder, She Wrote, but almost if somebody who had a real reverence to that show growing up and thought, you know what, it'd be brilliant if we got really good actors, if we really treated it seriously in terms of production values, cinematography, and all these things. And like you, I felt that it's just not quite learnt the precision and the level of flow that he managed to achieve by Red Rock West. In this, there was almost a few scenes where, or constantly maybe, where it just felt like maybe you should cut that a second later. Maybe you shouldn't have done that many cuts. Maybe you should have shot this slightly different. All these little things that were learnt on this film that by the time Red Rock West came, he was ready to go. And I just learned so much that it's just cut out anything that might be criticized in terms of momentum, I think is the word. Maybe this movie's lacking the momentum of Red Rock West, but I still thought it was good. I had a very good time.
Yeah, I don't know how much more conversation we're going to get out of this one, really, because I think I'm just in full agreement. It's a good, solid movie. Doesn't try to reinvent the wheel. It's just a good, solid, well-crafted wheel. And as you've said, you just need that sometimes. More than sometimes. You need that quite often. And as you also said, that well runs dry pretty quickly. Surprisingly hard to find people out there doing formulaic movies well. You'd think, well, if you've already got a formula in place, then surely like the majority of the work's done. Just have some good logic, some good acting, stuff like that. But time and time again, the ball is dropped in these kind of films. As you said, it feels like someone who's made it has great reverence for this type of film or this type of story. And yeah, I'd say that's true of the John Dahl movies I've seen. I'd say that's true of Tarantino's best work, although he eventually sort of became a genre unto himself. But certainly, like, my favorite things about Tarantino, and I'd say Rian Johnson as well, is just like watching someone play in an arena that they adore and kind of doing it really well. It's when, and this, I don't think John Dahl ever got to this level of success, perhaps thankfully in a weird way, but it's when they get so big that they can indulge far beyond what is allowed within these genres normally, and you get like 3 hours of screen time and 24 twists and that kind of stuff. How tight and hungry and lean and direct the John Dahl movies are is something that I really value. And if he had become like a massive smash hit auteur and we had seen him make the Red Rock West that's 3 hours long and has all sorts of different like thematic subplots and stuff, I think that would have been a real shame. Not to say that he definitely would have done that, but it's just something we've seen a lot of. Yeah, this one, it's a really good, solid debut. I think we're pretty much in agreement on like its limitations and the potential that's shown here. I also really like the twist. I like all the twists, but the twist you mentioned of like thinking that she's killed Michael Madsen, it's done very well. If I poke it a little bit, scrutinize it a little bit, I'm like, when did they work that out, her and Michael Madsen? But it's not, the film doesn't really you don't need to take everything that seriously. And that's where the duffel bag thing doesn't bother me. Like, you've come up with some sort of an explanation vaguely for it, but even if there's no explanation for it, it's like the film puts the work in as much. It's kind of like Chris Nolan, where it's like you've put enough work in that if there's a few little things that like don't quite make sense, that's all right, because I think you've done you've done enough. Like, you've kind of gone as far as we need a film like this to go in terms of making sure everything makes complete sense. Yes, there's always like room for improvement, and if memory serves, Red Rock West didn't have anything that well, actually, you know what? I do remember afterwards being a little bit unconvinced about the exact way in which Nicolas Cage is hired for the job at the beginning of the movie by JT Walsh. I felt like that might be a tiny little bit of a stretch that you got to go with to go at the movie, but that's fine. Like, I think Rounders and Joyride I haven't seen since I was a teenager, but I'd say they probably also have like one or two bits where it's like, okay, right, it's a movie, it's fine. By and large, his films are he's putting the work in. He cares about the material. He cares about crafting a really nice, enjoyable package. And yeah, I'm not sure how much else I have to say about it. Yeah, I agree. There's a Breaking Bad vibe. I mean, I think Breaking Bad's all set in New Mexico, and this is all set in Nevada. You know, beside each other, similar kind of nature environment. Of course, Breaking Bad doesn't have any of the gambling areas, Vegas and Reno, that we get here. But yeah, I like the bars. I just like kind of everywhere where this film takes place. I'm craving now a John Dahl TV show that he creates. Now that you've mentioned Breaking Bad, like, I just thought it'd be sweet if he was able to actually create a show like Ryan Johnson has with Poker Face. But yeah, I just think that ship has certainly sailed at this point. And maybe it's time to move on to The Last Seduction.
Yeah, like he said, pretty much nothing else to say. But I will say one thing. You mentioned you don't know when Joanna Wally and Michael Madsen would have come up with that plan. Well, the timeline of that is Val Kilmer goes about his business, dropping off the money, going to the gas station, and he said he was away for a few hours. In that time, Michael Madsen has come to the house, struck the deal with Joanna Wally that they're gonna make it look like that in order to flush out, should I say, where the money is. So there was quite a significant time where Val Kilmer wasn't in the house for them to come up with that plan. So I definitely had no problem with that at all. Oh yeah, and the other thing is, do you know what I like about these movies as well? He brings in some very minor characters and just fleshes out the scene a little more. Like the hotel clerk and the old man who says something along the lines, well, I'm not that old. And best of all, the cranky old guy who, when they show up to that place, wherever they are, that final place, it's almost like he doesn't want guests to come to the place, and he says something like, we've got no air conditioning, the cooler's broke, and then he seems very reluctant to even want them there. I think a lot of John Dahl films are littered with these minor characters that I like, and I think you're right. If we ever had got a TV show, it would have been perhaps almost like maybe a Fargo TV show. But yeah, anyway, maybe we'll get to The Last Seduction.
Your mailbox is full. Please delete new or stored messages which you no longer need so that new messages may be received.